An entitled recruiter from the military insults me constantly after I tell him that I'm not going to join the Marines, no matter what he says. And just when I finally have him off my back, things escalate in a way that I honestly never expected. Here's what happened. I'll start off first with some background. I attended a public high school in the United States for context for less than a school year to finish off my basic education. Before that, I was homeschooled and lived in a car, basically on the beach with my mom. I was put in foster care for a lot of reasons, so it was a lot of changes for me all at once. Now, the last time I was in an actual school setting was when I was 12 years old, so it was all very, very new to me. So I had never been approached by a military recruiter before, or even dealt with one in the process. So Sergeant Stupid, that's what I'll call him, came to my English class to try and brainwash the kiddos and make them think that the US military is fantastic. You get to travel the world, you get financial independence, and tons of benefits. He was spewing this BS that I wasn't really listening to, but that I found fascinating because I had never witnessed such a spectacle before. Sometime during this speech, we had to fill out a form. I remember answering honestly. I believe I had said that I don't have any interest in joining any faction of the military, but I did leave my real number when they asked for it, thinking that it would never actually be called. I don't recall detailing my life plans or anything on the form. I don't exactly recall leaving my number, but since he called my number afterwards, I'm guessing I did in fact put it on the form. I was respectful during the lecture, but never had expressed any interest in joining the military because I don't agree with a lot of what the US military does, especially when it comes to abroad. I got a call from Sergeant Stupid after I graduated, and I told him flat out that I was not interested in joining the military, believing that he wouldn't call me again. He had said something about keeping my options open to the military, but I thought that was the last of it. I didn't think to block his number because I really didn't think that this would become an issue. But I was absolutely wrong, as this blew way out of proportion and things escalated in a way that I honestly never expected. So one day, about a week later or so, my boyfriend and I are just having a nice day out at our local Chinatown, looking at all the things they had on sale. And that's when I get the call. I had no idea who it was from, whether it was from Sergeant Stupid or one of his contacts. So out of not knowing, I picked it up. He starts drilling me about what I'm doing after high school, and I flat out tell him that I'm looking for a non-military job to help me get on my feet. At the time, I just moved in with my boyfriend. Sergeant Stupid then starts to ask more questions, wanting to know exactly what that would be. I tell him that, I don't know, maybe Starbucks or something like that. And at the time, I was just trying to get any job, just as most teenagers would who have no work experience. Sergeant Stupid then goes to an A-level rant that starts with asking me if I really want to waste my life working at Starbucks. And I said to him, I don't know, probably not. Of course the answer is no, but what do you honestly expect out of an 18-year-old girl who is currently being yelled at by a 30-year-old man on her phone? Yes, a first job is a logical lifelong career choice, unless you join the military. So that's when he gets super aggressive, asking me where I want to be in 5 years. And I end up telling him that I don't really know for sure. He's getting all kinds of antsy because I'm not telling him my life plans. And he's explaining how the military can essentially set a plan for my life. This goes on and on. My boyfriend is there the entire time and was entertained by all of this. I told him I have no interest in joining the military, repeatedly at that, and that I'm not interested in the fact that they can pay for my college. I blatantly said I'm not joining the military no matter what. So that's when this man tells me how I'm wasting my life for not joining the military at the age of 18, and how I'm now setting myself up for failure, and that working at Starbucks is going to be my entire life. And then he angrily hangs up the phone, not without his last quip, stating that I'm wasting an opportunity. My boyfriend and I laughed about it afterwards. We called him a loser, and we talked about how much of a deranged idiot he was on the phone, all while we were just eating Chinese candy. I mean, honestly, military recruiters are something else. They've also tried to recruit me while I was at work before, but no one has been as rude or as belligerent as that one guy from when I turned 18. That is super obnoxious. It sounds like the recruiter on the other line clearly was not getting what he wanted, so he had to resort to basically insulting this person, all because he couldn't win the conversation, calling them a loser and how you're gonna waste your life at Starbucks. Like, come on, she's 18 years old, and Starbucks is not a bad job if it's your first job. Like, it seriously could have been a lot worse. So good for the original poster for standing their ground, because if you really want someone to join the military, treating them like garbage and basically insulting their life plans when they're barely an adult is absolutely not going to get you anywhere. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My husband keeps making inappropriate inappropriate comments about my weight, and it's honestly bothering me and I don't know what to do. So I consider myself a pretty healthy person. I eat a lot of whole foods and make my husband and I a salad for lunch almost every day. I'm not the skinniest, but I'm comfortable with my body. I'm 5'4" and I weigh about 145 pounds. I go to yoga class multiple times a week, so even though I'm not super slim, I am toned and I can hold various difficult yoga poses. My husband joined a workout group a year ago, and they lift weights about 6 times a week, intermittent fast, and restrict their diets. He's lost a lot of weight and gained a lot of muscle. He looks great, and I'm proud of him. However, I feel like he uses this as some kind of pass to make comments on my body and eating habits. For instance, I have a Solo cup filled with my favorite childhood candy that my sister brought from Mexico. I was on my second piece of candy when he walked in and noticed all the wrappers. He called me out by saying, "Do you really think you want to be that kind of person that eats 2 pieces of candy a day?" I got upset, and he later said that this is the way his workout buddies speak to one another for motivation. A couple of weeks ago, we were walking around a store, and I was wearing a crop top. My crop top lifted a few times, and I adjusted it. He told me I looked like Winnie the Pooh, and that he was embarrassed to be out in public with me. I got very emotional about this, and we had a long conversation where he was very apologetic and promised to never say something like that ever again. 10 days ago, we went on a 5-mile walk with my cousin and sister. I was wearing a sports bra. He tried to joke with my cousin and sister about how the sports bra made me look like Winnie the Pooh. Again, going back to that. It was so awkward. So we had another discussion about how hurt I feel when he makes comments on my body. He was again very apologetic and promised not to do it again. That same day, we were talking about weight gain and pregnancy with my family. I commented that it's healthy and expected for women to gain weight while pregnant. He then said that he thinks women should try to lose weight while pregnant and gain some muscle. He didn't tell me that I should try to lose weight while pregnant, but that women in general should try to lose weight. When I confronted him about this, he said, "I wasn't talking about you, but I'm a woman that's trying to get pregnant. In fact, we have been trying to get pregnant for 6 months, and it's just not happening," which has been another stressor in our relationship. I even tested negative for pregnancy today. I feel devastated, and he feels pretty sad too. He made a joke about infertility, and I instantly felt targeted, even though he said the joke was about how either one of us could be having some issues, not just me. I said that I have been feeling very stressed out with our attempts for pregnancy, and I feel out of it. I commented that I feel like I've been stress eating and gaining weight. He basically told me that I have been gaining weight and that I do look visibly larger. When I got upset, he said, "I didn't know you wanted me to lie to you." I told him that I wanted him to comfort me and that I don't think that my body has visible changes. Right now, I'm just in my bedroom processing all of this. I've had really bad body weight issues in the past. I don't know my exact weight right now, simply because I stopped weighing myself. He is aware of my battle with body image and weight, which makes his comments more hurtful to me than ever. Right now, I think I weigh about 145, and I wear a size 5 in pants. And even though I weigh about 145, I'm toned from yoga practice, and my weight is evenly distributed. I'm still gluten-free and dairy-limited for health reasons, but I allow myself to eat all the whole food groups. I still limit my added sugar intake, and I think I'm an attractive person. I know this is not a real measurement, but I get compliments pretty frequently on my body. My sister's friend jokes around about how when she gets her gastric bypass, she hopes she looks as good as me. I know she was joking, but it made me feel really good. I also know that weight and body image aren't everything, and that there's more to people and life than looks. But his comments are still weighing on me, and it makes me wonder if he finds me unattractive. When I asked him about that, he swears he finds me incredibly attractive. I feel like I've worked really hard to build up my confidence, and I'm not sure how to deal with the comments that he's making. How do I address these comments and get past these hurtful remarks that my husband keeps making? What should I do? I have to say, the way your husband is acting is incredibly childish. I mean, he's treating you like some kind of gym bro instead of like his spouse. Like, that is incredibly toxic altogether. From what you've described, he sounds incredibly vain and incredibly mean. I mean, what is with that guy? You simply don't say that to your spouse. Like, that's inappropriate. I mean, this guy was criticizing pregnant women, stating that they should try to lose weight while they're pregnant. I mean, does this guy even know what he's talking about? Like, seriously, this guy is super toxic. So hopefully some kind of conversation can break through to this guy, because if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would be tolerating this, because I can see how these comments would be hurtful, and you honestly deserve so much better than that. My wife is extremely negative about almost everything in our life, and despite my my best efforts of literally doing everything possible to try and break through to my wife, she still simply refuses to change her ways, and I honestly am at a loss and I don't know what to do. So my wife is extremely negative and is constantly criticizing everything and everyone, including me and our 2 kids. We've been married for 15 years, and this has been her behavior since the beginning, but it's only in recent years that I've really seen it and gotten increasingly intolerant of it. Both of her siblings are this way too, and they definitely learned it from their mother. I asked her today what she would like to do for Valentine's Day, and she started immediately by criticizing me for all the things I always do on Valentine's Day that she simply doesn't like, even though a lot of it was blatant mischaracterization. Frustrated, I kept asking her to tell me what she wants to do, not what she doesn't want to do. She then says that I'm just controlling her, but I maintain that I'm asking for an answer that's positive rather than negative. There are infinite ways to get it wrong, but very few ways to get it right. So telling me what she doesn't want isn't terribly informative or helpful. Plus, the criticism doesn't exactly inspire romance. Now, she is like this in all other arenas of life. She cannot maintain good long-term relationships with anyone because eventually they do something that she doesn't like, and then she begins the process of criticism and talks herself into believing that they aren't worthy of having a relationship with her. And then, as a result, she lets the relationship fall apart. After 5 years of marriage, we've been through a lot, and it's been much worse than necessary because of her constant negativity. The strength of our marriage has been filled with tension in recent years as it is, and from my perspective, it's almost entirely due to her constant criticism. I've told her how anyone can point out a flaw or something to criticize about anyone or anything, and that doing so unnecessarily simply degrades the quality of relationships as well as the quality of interactions with anybody. But she won't hear it. In her mind, she is always entitled to criticize, and that if I don't like it, it's because I'm just too immature to hear her out. She is extremely dismissive of my feelings. We've both been to therapy and marriage counseling in years past, which helped us work through a lot of these issues. But in my mind, this is the last great hurdle of our marriage. It has caused me, and especially the kids, a tremendous amount of undue grief to deal with her constant criticism and resulting emotional outbursts. I know that if she were to see this point, it would only fuel the fire rather than cause any amount of self-reflection. I'm open to more counseling, but she is not, and says that she knows better than the therapist at this point. So now I'm kind of at a loss, and I honestly don't know what to do. This situation really does sound quite awful. I mean, imagine trying to be in that kind of situation and hold any kind of positivity in your life. It literally just would not work. I just could not see that happening, especially when your wife is acting so negative all the time, and it's over such small things at that. Like, she is literally complaining about all the things that she doesn't want to do on Valentine's Day, instead of just communicating like, hey, this is what I want to do. Like, she's looking for these negative instances just to try and find some kind of fault, and that's really not fair for you or anybody else involved. So I can completely understand where you're coming from and where your frustration is really rooted. It sounds like you've done almost everything you possibly can to try and get through to your wife, who's honestly being incredibly nasty and overly negative. Like, what is going on here? In fact, the original poster even went on to say that they seriously have done their best and they've tried everything they possibly can to try and get through to their wife. So hopefully there's some kind of solution that both of you can come to that would bring both of you the most happiness in your life, especially for your kids. I can't imagine how much stress they must be under when their mom starts acting like this and treating her husband as well as her kids like this. Because honestly, with all things considered, none of you deserve to be treated that way. My female neighbor is very clearly trying to hook up with me while my wife is away on work, and it's honestly made everything incredibly awkward, and I seriously don't know what to do. So my wife is out of town for a few weeks. Our relationship is incredibly healthy and we are very happy, so I can confidently say that it is great. A few days after my wife leaves, I'm taking a smoke break outside of my apartment complex, and I'm suddenly approached by a woman. She asks if I live in the building, and I say yeah, and she said she's seen me around and was wondering who I was. We've been there less than a year, and she said that she just moved in, and she was asking how I like the place. I immediately mentioned that my wife and I moved in about a year ago. It turns out she came from the same city that we just moved from, and she works in the same industry as us. Throughout the entirety of our conversation, I keep mentioning my wife, simply because she is my world. That's when this lady asks if my wife is inside, and I respond by saying no, she's actually out of town for a little bit. This lady then comments that she's never actually seen my wife around, or even ever seen her with me. She then asks what she looks like, so I show her a photo and she responds by saying that she's pretty. Eventually, the neighbor asked for some help with the work that we both do in our field, and I said sure, she can message me for advice and we can exchange numbers, which honestly was a big mistake. I then tell her that I need to call my wife, so I'm heading back in, and as we're saying goodbyes, she offhand asks me if I know any single people in the area and if I could help her out in meeting someone. But I just look at her and I tell her no, and I honestly thought that was incredibly weird. Now, flirting has always gone over my head. Even my wife took several tries to get my attention when we were courting, and it was after I got back inside, I realized that I just gave my number to a woman who was very clearly flirting with me. So when my wife called me, I told her the entire story. She laughed uncontrollably because she knows I'm a dummy and that I wouldn't do anything. She said it seemed harmless, and I've told her that I'm married, so she'll probably just back off. Plus, my wife and I get flirted with all the time. We are an attractive couple, so it's common for us to get flirted with, despite the wedding rings that are clearly on our fingers. But neither of us would ever do anything to betray the other one's trust. So it's now been about a week, and my neighbor keeps messaging me at night, asking me what I'm doing, talking about how she misses being at home and all this other stuff, asking me how my girlfriend is doing. Yeah, you heard that right. Not my wife, but my girlfriend. But I either don't respond at all, or I've just messaged like a single line to try and keep things short. I've responded by saying that she should get out of the neighborhood and try and meet some people for work, and that she should try networking with other people, stuff like that. Never setting anything up with me, always saying I'm on the phone with my wife, even if I'm not, and keeping it strictly business. The other night, she was really spamming me with messages, again asking me how my girlfriend was, which I just completely ignored. And then eventually, she asked me if I had time to talk tonight, and before she had a chance to call, because absolutely I expected her to try and call me, I told her no. I said I'm waiting for my wife to call me, and she responds by saying, right, your woman comes first, and I have just ignored her since then. My wife called that night, and I told her how this is getting out of hand, while also asking if I'm crazy or if she really is trying to get with me. My wife agreed that this is exactly what she is trying to do. I'm a tall, good-looking guy in shape, and I'm currently sitting at home alone with my wife out of town. My wife said she's trying to get into our bed while she is away. I told her that isn't happening, and I'm going to straight up block this neighbor, and we agreed that this wasn't harmless. Now it's awkward because this isn't a big complex, and I know I will run into her eventually. She doesn't know what apartment I'm in, thank goodness, and I'm going to block her number, and I honestly don't know how I'm going to handle it if I do end up bumping into her, because she seems incredibly clingy, and she doesn't seem to care about any kind of boundaries. She knows that I'm married. All I do is talk about my wife. I've dismissed anything she asked of me that is personal, and honestly, I plan on keeping that way. So it honestly begs the question. It was a mistake to give her my number, and I'm aware of that, but now how do I handle this situation? What should I do? This really is a funny situation. You were trying to be nice outside your apartment, and then suddenly you have some other woman's number, and she's messaging you as if you're her boyfriend. And this is all while she's blatantly ignoring the fact that you have a wife, and that you are absolutely not interested in this lady. So I completely agree with you and your wife that this lady is clearly trying to hook up with you, and that the way she's acting is incredibly inappropriate. If I was in your shoes and I ran into this lady, I would be straight up blunt with her, and I would say, you know what, I don't like the way you're texting me, and I find it incredibly inappropriate, so I blocked you. So please stop communicating with me and leave me alone. And of course, she's gonna try and have some kind of rebuttal or something along those lines, but you honestly do not have to entertain that ever again. You're both adults, and she should know better than to try and break up your marriage, which would eventually lead you exactly to that conclusion. And I think you need to reframe this for a little bit, because this is not you being ignorant to the obvious situation going on, but instead, this is her absolutely ignoring boundaries, as well as social cues that are obviously right in front of her face. So if I were you, I would tell her straight up, no, I'm not interested. I have a loving wife at home, and honestly, nothing's gonna compromise that. And then you can just leave it at that. I mean, seriously, what's the worst that could happen? She comes knocking on your door demanding to have you start texting her again? That's honestly ridiculous, and there's no reason for you to even entertain that in the slightest. I also think maybe next time, if this ever does happen again, just in case, it would probably serve you really well to learn how to say no. Being too nice gets you in these kind of situations. And yes, you should be nice to those around you, but when it's at your expense or your spouse's expense, that's when your inability to say no is going to cause some serious problems. So hopefully this works out for you, because this lady seriously has nefarious intentions, and if I were you, I would just block her and move on with your life. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out in the description below and subscribe.